He was sitting in seat 11A, his head leaning awkwardly against the airplane window, his jacket folded into a poor excuse for a pillow. The engines roared, the cabin trembled, and Flight 784 lifted itself off the runway and into the gray morning sky. Around him, passengers adjusted seatbelts, whispered prayers, or stared blankly at seatback screens. Daniel didn't notice any of it. For the first time in 3 days, his body finally surrendered. Just hours earlier, he had been standing in a hospital corridor that smelled of disinfectant and loss, holding the small hand of his 8-year-old daughter, Lily. She had finally fallen asleep after crying herself hoarse, asking again and again why her mother wasn't waking up. Daniel had no answers left. Emily Carter had died suddenly from a brain aneurysm. No warning, no goodbye. One moment she was laughing in their kitchen, teasing Daniel about burning toast, and the next she was gone. Just like that. Now Daniel was a single father, flying from Chicago to Seattle to start over near his sister, carrying a life that had shattered overnight. Lily sat beside him in 11B, curled up with her stuffed rabbit, her breathing soft and even. Daniel had promised himself he would stay awake, watch over her, protect her. But exhaustion is a quiet thief. It steals resolve without asking permission. So he slept. Minutes after takeoff, the cockpit door closed with a soft click, and Captain Robert Hayes scanned his instruments. He had flown for 30 years, through storms, turbulence, and emergencies, but something on his display made his brow tighten. A warning light flickered. Then another. Hydraulics pressure fluctuation, the first officer muttered. Captain Hayes nodded calmly, but his mind was already racing. This wasn't an immediate emergency, but it was serious. If the pressure dropped further, they could lose partial control during landing. He informed air traffic control and began running procedures. Then something unusual happened. A flight attendant named Sarah approached the cockpit, her face pale. "Captain, there's a man in 11A. He has a military tag on his bag. Fighter pilot wings." Captain Hayes paused. "So, he hasn't woken up since takeoff. Not even when the plane shook. And, there's something about him. I think you should know." The captain hesitated. FAA rules were strict. But instinct, something no manual could teach, told him to listen. "What kind of pilot?" Hayes asked. Sarah swallowed. F-16. Retired, I think. Captain Hayes looked back at the flickering warning light. Then he made a decision that would later be questioned, debated, and written about. "Find out his name," he said quietly. "And wake him. Gently." Sarah returned to the cabin. She knelt beside Daniel and lightly touched his shoulder. Sir, I'm sorry to disturb you." Daniel jolted awake, heart pounding, his hand instinctively moving as if reaching for controls that weren't there. "Years of training never really leave you." "I'm sorry," he said quickly, blinking. "Did I?" "You're not in trouble," Sarah said softly. "The captain would like to speak with you." Daniel froze. "Why?" "There's a situation," she replied. "And, your experience may help." Minutes later, Daniel sat in the jump seat behind the cockpit, Lily still asleep, unaware that her father's past was about to collide with their fragile present. Captain Hayes turned slightly. "Mr. Carter, we're experiencing a hydraulic issue. Not catastrophic, but risky. I was told you flew fighters." Daniel nodded slowly. 20 years. Air Force. "I know protocol doesn't allow passengers in the cockpit for anything beyond observation," Hayes said, choosing his words carefully. "I'm not asking you to fly this plane. But another trained mind, it could matter." Daniel stared at the instruments, his eyes adjusting, his brain awakening in a way grief hadn't allowed for days. "May I?" he asked. Hayes gestured. Daniel leaned forward, scanning readouts. "Pressure loss is intermittent. Could be a faulty sensor, or a microleak. You'll want a longer runway. Minimal braking." The first officer looked at Hayes. Hayes nodded. For the next 40 minutes, Daniel spoke calmly, methodically, helping the crew think through contingencies. He wasn't a hero. He didn't save the plane alone. But his presence steadied something fragile in the cockpit. When Flight 784 landed safely in Seattle, passengers applauded, unaware of how close uncertainty had crept. Only later did the story emerge. A tired single father. A grieving man. A pilot who had lost his wife and nearly his sense of purpose, finding meaning again not in the sky, but in being needed. When Daniel returned to his seat, Lily was awake, rubbing her eyes. "Daddy," She whispered. Did you go somewhere? He smiled for the first time since the hospital. I'll always come back, he said, holding her close. Outside the window, the rain fell gently over Seattle. And life, broken, imperfect, still painful, began again. The applause inside the cabin faded, replaced by the soft chime of seatbelt signs and relieved murmurs. Most passengers believed they had just experienced mild turbulence, nothing more. They gathered bags, checked phones, complained about delays. They never knew how close the sky had come to asking for more. Daniel remained seated for a moment longer than necessary, his hands resting on his knees, trembling just slightly now that adrenaline had loosened its grip. Lily leaned against him, her small fingers wrapped around his sleeve. You look different, Daddy, she said. He kissed the top of her head. Just tired, sweetheart. But that wasn't the truth. For the first time since Emily's death, Daniel felt something unfamiliar stirring beneath the grief, purpose. Not the old kind, forged in fighter jets and combat missions, but something quieter. Something human. As they stepped into the jet bridge, a uniformed airline supervisor approached them, followed by Captain Hayes. Mr. Carter, the captain said, extending his hand. I don't believe, thank you, is enough. Daniel shook it firmly. You handled it well. I just helped think out loud. Hayes smiled. That's exactly what we needed. The supervisor cleared her throat. Sir, the airline would like to document what happened. And, there may be some media interest. Daniel stiffened. I'd rather not. Hayes noticed immediately. He's not here for attention, he said. He's here for his daughter. The supervisor nodded, understanding more than Daniel expected. Of course. We'll respect that. They walked away, unnoticed, blending into the flow of passengers, just another father and child starting over. That night, Daniel and Lily stayed at his sister Rachel's apartment. Seattle rain tapped gently against the windows as Lily fell asleep in a new bed, clutching her rabbit tighter than ever. Later, Daniel sat alone on the couch, staring at nothing. The silence pressed in. That's when his phone buzzed. Unknown number. He almost ignored it. Hello, he answered. Mr. Carter, a calm voice said. This is Colonel James Whitaker, United States Air Force. Retired. Daniel straightened. Yes, sir. I heard about Flight 784, Whitaker said. You did exactly what you were trained to do, even when you didn't have to. Daniel exhaled. I'm not active anymore. We know, Whitaker replied. This isn't about flying. There was a pause. We're putting together a civilian aviation safety advisory team, the colonel continued. Former pilots, crisis thinkers, people who can help before emergencies become disasters. Daniel closed his eyes. I just lost my wife, he said quietly. My daughter needs me. Exactly, Whitaker replied gently. And sometimes, being needed is how we survive loss. The line went silent. Think about it, Whitaker added. No pressure. After the call ended, Daniel sat there for a long time. Then he walked into Lily's room. She was sleeping peacefully, her chest rising and falling, unaware of how fragile the world truly was, and how fiercely her father intended to guard her place in it. Daniel realized something then. He couldn't protect Lily from pain. But he could show her how to stand back up after it. Weeks passed. Daniel began consulting, part-time, flexible hours. He was home for breakfast. He walked Lily to school. He learned how to braid hair badly and burn pancakes worse. And sometimes, when a plane passed overhead, Lily would look up and smile. My daddy talks to planes, she'd say proudly. One evening, as the sun broke through Seattle clouds in rare golden streaks, Lily asked, Mommy would be proud of you, right? Daniel swallowed hard. Yes, he said. I think she would. Above them, a jet cut cleanly through the sky. Daniel didn't miss flying, because now, his greatest mission walked beside him, holding his hand.